it's Presley at ActOutGames.com here, and today we're going to be talking about shells and orbitals. Don't know about them yet, though.
Shells and orbitals in what?
And?
In what? What are shells and orbitals in?
An atom?
An atom. That's exactly right. So we did a little video the other day about atoms, and there's quite a bit of information in there, so I thought we'd break it down a little bit more into focus just on the shells and orbitals for a quick little video and make it a little easier to understand.
Yeah.
You've done some of this, but I think it'll even make it a little more clear for you. Okay? So when we're talking about an atom, again, we talked about the nucleus and what lives in the nucleus.
Neutrons and protons.
Neutrons and protons live
Says Invisible Woman.
in the nucleus. That's right. You want to come right here so people can see you? There you go. So neutrons and protons live here, and we're not really going to talk about them today, other than they sit in the nucleus. And then electrons float around the nucleus. And we talked about before how this is not a great representation of what these look like, but I'll show you a little bit later what they really look like, or kind of what they look like. Not right now. So these, you think about just this distance from the nucleus. These are what we would call shells. The first, second, third, and fourth shells. So when you talk about shells and electron placement, the shell that an electron lives in really just kind of tells you how far away from the nucleus it is. And that'll become significant later when we talk in more detail about the energy levels. And when we talk about how reactive things can be and how things get on the periodic table, how far something away is from how far something is away from the nucleus will be significant. But today we're just talking about the definitions. So the other thing, the orbitals that we were talking about, each of these shells can break down into subshells or orbitals, little pieces, okay? And those are the S, P, D, and F orbitals. So each of these has one or more of these orbitals, and on each of these orbitals can hold a certain number of electrons. So the first one, S can hold 2, P can hold 6, D can hold 10, and F can hold 14. So it's just something that you kind of learn. And then when you start structuring these, building these things out, you'll see that the first shell, it just has an S. It has one S orbital in it. And since the first shell only has one S, how many electrons can the first shell hold?
2.
2. That's exactly right. So the first shell can only hold 2. And then the second shell has an S and a P. You sort of add 1 each time you go up. So it can hold 8, that's right. It can hold 2 in its S and 6 in its P. The third one has an S, a P, and a D.
18.
And so it can hold 18. That's exactly right. And then the fourth one has S, a P, a D, and an F. And so how many can it hold?
Oh my.
That's 32. So it can hold 32 total. But as they fill in, and we'll talk a little bit more, in detail again, we'll space it all out and then do smaller chunks of this. But as they fill out, there's a certain order that, when the first electron comes in, obviously it goes into 1s, and then the second one goes into 1s as well, and then that one's full because it only has that s orbital. But then this one, it'll get its first 2 in its s, and then it'll get 6 in its p, and then it'll go to the next layer. So the layers kind of fill up before they move out, and really they fill up the S and the P. As long as they fill up the S and the P, then they can move to the S on the next level. But the most important thing to remember here is that when we're talking about shells, we're talking about the distance from the nucleus, the energy levels that outside of the nucleus, and then each of the shells can be broken down into orbitals. And these are the orbitals that we deal with right now, the S, P, D, and F, and how many each of those have. And then later on, we can talk a little bit about how you can determine or how you can know how many electrons can live in each shell. There's some pretty easy math to be able to do that, and we'll talk about that later. But for now, I just wanted to talk about the structure of shells and orbitals. So when you're dealing with atoms and how to place electrons and where they go and what it means for something to be in the 3s shell. So like 3s1 means the first electron in the third shell s orbital. So when you get into more advanced notation around these things, you'll see that they talk a lot about 4p3. So again, the fourth shell, the p orbital, the third electron in that orbital. So this notation will become significant as we dig a little bit deeper and talk more about how these things work. But that's what I wanted to show you guys today. Does this all make sense, Poochon?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent.
Spitif.
Spitif. That's right. Just remember Spitif.
Yes.
Okay. John Toite.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.